Food is more than just what's on our plate. It's the places where it's grown, it's the people who grow it, and so much more. Join me, Janice Person, your host, on Grounded by the Farm every other week as we talk about the foods we love. Hey everybody, this is Janice, and I am in Middle Tennessee on the northern side, almost to Kentucky. Almost, but in Adams, Tennessee. And I'm at the home of the Swanson family. And everybody is here with us. I'm going to talk to Jeff Swanson, but later I'm going to take a family photo so you get to meet everybody because these boys are something. She may give me a family photo she's taken because it's 100-something degrees today. We're here talking about Wagyu beef, Wagyu cattle. First off, I love beef. I love Kobe beef. I love Wagyu beef. I have a ex-brother-in-law who's Japanese, so we still have family in Japan. I've gone there with my nephew, we visited his grandparents while we were there and stuff. Wagyu, it's a breed of cattle, sorta.
Wagyu is more of a broad term. It refers to any of 4 breeds found in Japan.
Okay.
So you have the Japanese black, Japanese brown or red Wagyu, Japanese shorthorn, and Japanese polled.
Okay.
So all those, because Wagyu translate literally to Japanese cow or Japanese beef.
All right. That's not the way we usually think of it, though, in the U.S. We usually think of something on my plate or on the menu.
Which is true. I mean, if it's descended from the Japanese genetics that were brought in, they had an importation of 4 bulls in 1976. Mm-hmm. And those bulls came here to do a study for the Japanese on how they crossed on other breeds. Okay. Because at the time, Japan was looking at increasing their beef production, but the only other prominent breed in Japan, other than their native Wagyu, was Holsteins. Huh. So they sent 2 reds and 2 blacks, 4 bulls over in 76 to do a study with Washington State University on how they would crossbreed. And then that kind of got out, and other people got semen off those bulls. And from there all the way up until 92, 93, they developed what were considered purebred Wagyu in this country.
Okay.
Still very small, very localized, didn't get out a whole lot. And then a couple investment groups found a loophole in the Japanese export system in the mid-90s.
Oh, nice.
And they imported 100% Wagyu animals from 93 to 97, I believe. And then in 97, after the last shipment, the Japanese said, nope, no more. We're cutting it off.
Okay.
These are a national treasure. No more will leave Japan.
Wow. Okay, so that's got so many questions to me in it. So Wagyu is I've been to Japan. They truly treasure what they treasure. Like rice is like an incredibly glorious plant, and it means life, all these kind of things. So Wagyu is like a treasured part of their country's history, and they don't want it just necessarily taken everywhere and things. But we had a time period where we could pull it out.
Exactly.
So help me understand how it's gotten growth in the U.S. because it's still high end. So help me understand how it is such a premium and
and that's the thing is there's up until and even now there's more and more people getting into this breed every day. Uh-huh. But if you go all the way back to the late 80s, early 90s and all that, there's very few people raising these animals.
Yeah.
I personally didn't know about Wagyu until about a year before we started raising them. I had heard of Kobe beef.
So are they hard to raise or something?
They're not hard to raise, I don't think. They're just like anything else, an unknown. Yeah, I think would be the best way to put it.
People are very familiar with Angus, Simmental, Charolais.
Exactly, and then because of the rarity of them, several years ago, I think the total numbers of Wagyu in the United States was roughly 50,000.
Oh.
And that sounds like a big number, but it's not.
Not when I think how many people like beef.
Well, you look at the Ames report on how many are processed each week under USDA inspection, and it's up over 500,000 every week.
Okay.
So if everybody decided, hey, we only want Wagyu beef, they're all gone in a day.
So this is totally not what I wanted to talk about early, but I saw last night there's like a Arby's commercial where they're selling Wagyu beef. And then I saw in really small fine print that it's like 51% Wagyu and 49% other American beef.
And I actually saw a little insight into that. And it's a blended product.
Yeah.
So they're taking what I guess is an industry standard name of American Wagyu, which is genetically the animal is half Wagyu, half Angus.
Okay.
They were taking the ground beef off of those animals and blending it with regular commercial ground beef. So that 51% is really not accurate.
Okay.
You're more about 25% or somewhere in that line. You're still going to get some of the benefits from the Wagyu, but not the benefits that you have with the full
So
blood.
Wagyu has such an amazing connotation. Your mouth starts watering when you think of it. But people who haven't had it, how would you explain it as a beef product?
You're gonna take the best steak you've ever eaten and just multiply it. I mean,
Like
it's
exponentially.
Exactly. It has a rich, buttery taste to it because of the fat content. And it's just literally melt in your mouth.
It's like it's fork tender when you're cutting it.
Exactly. You can almost cut a steak with your fork.
Yep.
I mean, it's just wonderful. And we had some steaks analyzed several years ago, and I think the melting point on the fat of the steaks was like 96 degrees.
Wow.
At that point. So it literally melts in your mouth. So you get that really soft, buttery texture to it. And then the tenders, on the Warner-Brasler shear force test, which is how they test tenderness of meat, I think a 4 is considered extremely tender. And the ribeyes we sent, I think they tested like 2.9.
Oh, wow.
Which is
insanely
tender. More tender than the most tender steak, yes.
Yeah.
It's just mind-boggling. I mean, that these animals are just that inherently different from our continental breeds.
Yeah. So that's part of the premium is that kind of level of tenderness. And then part of the premium is that there's not so many of them.
A lot of it, yeah. And you mentioned Kobe beef earlier, and Kobe is a name brand. They're all specifically a Tajima strain of black Wagyu raised in Hyogo Prefecture, Japan. And then they have to grade above a certain level to be basically trademarked as Kobe.
Kind of like Vidalia onions, champagne versus sparkling wines, all those things.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what makes Kobe beef Kobe. It has to be from a specific lineage of Japanese black Wagyu, and it has to be raised in that area and has to grade above a certain level. And, of course, they're going to have animals that do not grade there, so they get sold under
other names.
A different name.
It's a Japanese beef that's just beef.
Yeah, and that Kobe is not a breed of animals. It's a trademark, basically.
Yeah, like certified Angus in the U.S. Okay. So Wagyu, though, part of what at least I think I've seen, so you're going to correct me if I'm wrong, is that the marbling of the steak looks a little bit different. So a lot of people are used to what a ribeye looks like.
Yeah. And with the Wagyu influence, you can get a very well-dispersed marbling. And depending on the genetics of the animal,
he's obviously going to find me photos or something. So.
You can get very fine marbling to where it looks like somebody just took a pen and started punching holes and putting marbling in there. And we'll find some really pretty steaks.
Well, I'll make sure I put these on the website. I'm getting to text those. Oh, wow. That almost looks like a salami or some kind of thing that you've mechanically gone in.
And it's not. That's all natural. I mean, this is literally a picture of when they first split the carcass.
Yeah.
So that's the initial, once they split it open right there
you can see
at the
ribs.
rib. So that would be a ribeye once it's all cut up.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's the first impression we got of that beef.
Wow. Okay. So now tell me why that marbling really matters.
Helps with increased tenderness and that rich, buttery flavor. And that's one thing with Wagyu is our particular program, you have people that try to push the envelope and compare it to Kobe and Mizuyaki or whatever, the extreme A5 Japanese. We're a little bit more, I guess, modest. I mean, too much of a good thing. But Wagyu is so rich in flavor. It can be so rich in flavor that you really don't want to eat huge portions. And
right.
I've always been a steak guy. I love a big, juicy steak. If we went to the extreme, and that is actually right on the border of, that would be considered in that A5 scale. But that's one of those.
You don't always get them that way.
We'll take it. But that's the thing is, one of our ribeyes is going to weigh 24 ounces.
Yeah.
On an average. I mean, they're thick cut, 1.25 inches.
I'm sitting here, eyes wide open, a 24-ounce ribeye.
And it's something you would not typically want to sit down and eat by yourself.
No, I would not.
Split it with your spouse or a friend or somebody, and
it's a better way to cook it because that fat melts at such a low temperature. You don't have to cook it as hard as some people like to cook.
No, and most of your Wagyu beef is going to be best eaten medium to medium rare.
Yeah.
I'm a medium guy. Some people like medium rare. To me, when it gets on the rare side, you almost get a little chewiness to it, where right there at that perfect pink medium, I get the exact experience I want.
At 24 ounces, I'm thinking how much thicker that steak is than a typical grocery store cut, right?
Yeah, your typical grocery store cut's going to be 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch.
Exactly. So cooking it through at medium rare or something is very different than.
Yeah. Well, and just me personally, everybody has their own way of cooking things.
Yeah.
I started when we first started processing 4 years ago, experimenting. On how to cook. That way I could relay to my customers what works for me.
Okay.
And give them.
So you do the cooking around here instead of Chris?
I cook some of the meats. She does a lot of the cooking, but I usually cook the meats. But for me, what works best for us is the reverse sear method. So it's low and slow and then hit it with the heat at the end.
Okay.
And our meat just works out really well that way. Because we can take just about anything. You can take a roast, reverse sear it, and it's phenomenal. Just a simple thing like a sirloin tip roast.
Because so often I hear about searing it first and then cooking it low. So the reverse sear is the reverse of that.
Well, exactly. And I'm going to show you. This is a picture from a customer.
He's going to have to text me all of these so I can put them in.
But you see how that
is?
My goodness. It's perfect throughout the whole steak with a thin crust around the outside.
Yeah. Gosh, I'm going to want steak now for lunch.
And that's what I that's what I love about the reverse sear versus hitting it with the heat first. Because you hit it with, say, 400 or 500 degrees first, you're starting to overcook that outside layer.
Okay.
And then, as you put it in and you lower the temperature down, it minimizes that. But at the same time, that first 1/4 inch or whatever is going to be overcooked.
So do you cook it on a grill or do you cook it in the stove?
Most of the time I do it in the oven and then sear it on the skillet.
Okay.
But I've done...
Cast iron skillet.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So do you use any butter or anything? Because a lot of steaks, I know people talk about using butter with them.
Usually what I'll use when I sear it is I'll put some of our beef tallow in it. So we take keep some of the excess fat off the animals.
Yep.
And we sell it to people that want to make their own tallow or maybe mix it with venison or something like that. And so we usually render it down, make our own tallow, keep a jar in the refrigerator, and I throw a little bit of that in my skillet.
I love it.
And I'll sear it in that. So
one of my favorite places to eat in St. Louis that has it's a butcher shop and lunch place, and they make tallow fries, and the fries are just going to be differently, right? But it's a butcher shop, so
skillet potatoes with beef tallow is.
Okay, so wow, I'm learning a lot. And we've gone out and we've seen your herd. We saw you have bulls here. You have different ages every 6 months, right? So
pretty much, yeah. We have everything from 3 years old here at our place down to some yearlings.
Okay, and so we went to one of your places that you lease. That's where we saw the mamas and the babies. And so those were your brand new ones.
Yes, they're all 30 to 60 days old.
Okay. And so they're just playing in the pasture, playing in the woods, whatever they want to do with their days, we saw them playing around. They ran like crazy towards us as we were driving up. And then at what point do you bring them over here to your home place?
Usually, hopefully, by that time, I've got another lot cleared out to move a group in. But we try to bring them here about 14 months old.
Okay. So they'll stay out there playing until they're 14 months old. And then you bring them here. It's more of like a feedlot kind of.
Yeah, concentrated feed environment. So we give them free choice hay once they come here, and then we give them a grain ration twice a day.
And you kind of keep them together by age, so they're the
Yes.
other cows that they know, the other steers that they know.
They just more comfortable that way, you know. And you wouldn't want to put a year-old calf in with a 3-year-old steer just because of the size difference. The bigger one's going to be the bully and push them around, and they won't get the opportunity to eat. So this keeps everything a little bit more even.
Well, we even saw with some of your mama cows, one of them pushing the other one around.
They can get kind of bossy.
Wanting to get to that feed or keep the other ones away from it. So it's so intriguing. And here you'll feed them hay or grass or whatever it is. And then you also give them a little bit of corn or something?
Yeah, we give them a mixture of corn, barley, soy meal, protein pellet, and then we also feed spent brewer's grain.
That's right.
We pick up the spent grains from a brewery right down the road in Nashville. And
my listeners are very familiar with Tennessee Brew Works.
Yeah,
Christian's been on the show a couple times.
Matt's been our friends for several years. And so we take all their waste product and utilize it. So instead of it going to a landfill and them getting charged a disposal fee, we bring it here and feed it to the cows.
So what kind of grains?
They're wheat and barley mostly.
Okay. Yeah. I was just thinking, you think about which beers people are drinking, right?
Yeah.
So there's always barley, and we did an interview with one of their barley farmers, but also wheat beers are pretty darn popular.
Yeah.
And so they just, as they process that stuff off to get the alcohol and parts they need, then there's this additional part.
Yes. The solids that are left over, and it's a lot of it. Each bin that we get weighs about 1,000 pounds.
Okay.
The bin itself doesn't weigh, 40 pounds, but then you've got roughly 1,000 pounds of material inside it.
Oh, wow.
And
what do the cows get from that?
They get a lot of nutrients. The biggest thing they do not get is calcium.
Okay.
Or the sugars and starches. They get a little bit because there's still a little bit of residual sugar in there after the brewing process, but it's depleted in calcium is the biggest thing. But it's a high energy commodity still. I mean, we had some analyzed a few years ago. It was 79% total digestible nutrients.
Wow. And
that's based on the dry matter.
Yeah.
And of course, it's about 60% moisture.
Wow.
Even though their particular program, it's not big solids, it's more of a fine cornmeal type mix.
Okay.
They run it through a hammer mill before the brewing process. So it's very fine particles, but there's still a lot of great nutrients for the cows to absorb from it.
This is one of those upcycling things that I think happens so often in agriculture that people don't hear about.
And I've heard of other producers, they get like unsellable candies, bread, all kinds of different commodity things that would end up going in a dumpster somewhere.
Yeah, going to a landfill and becoming a problem somewhere else.
Exactly. So why not bring those, what they would be waste products, home to the farm and feed it to your cattle, feed it to your hogs, whatever you have, and make something else out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the saying, cows are the best upcycling in the world. They turn the grass into beef.
Well, their stomachs can do things that you and I.
Yeah.
They can take things that you and I would never be able to take.
And that's the thing is, we spoke a little bit about this in the truck. There's so much misinformation out there. People that think, oh my gosh, don't feed cows corn because it ruins their stomachs. And it doesn't. I mean, you need a balance. I mean, obviously, they need that hay or that grass to help solidify and balance things out in their rumen, but they can eat a lot of corn.
Well, and you think about it, a lot of grasses that they could be eating out in, pastures and stuff, it has seeds and stuff like that on it too, right?
Yeah.
And those seeds are, the wonder of breeding, but teosinte was a grass that was like the head of it was as small as my pinky. And now we've got corn that came out from that from centuries or millennia thanks to the native peoples of this world, right?
Exactly. Yeah, they've cultivated, and the same things happen in the cattle. We started out with one specific thing, and then we've selectively bred, and they've done the same thing.
And you have dairy, and you have beef, and you have...
And it's split off into all these different tangents, and there's literally a breed for everybody.
Yeah.
You've got the people that love the Wagyu like we do. You have the people that, nothing's better than a Longhorn, or Angus, or Hereford, or Simmental, or Limousin. There's just so many breeds out there for everybody to pick and choose from.
When we were out looking at your cattle, you kept saying, "I just like the look of them."
I do. Well, I mean, I've been a cowboy at heart for my whole life, pretty much. From a little kid riding my pony around, that's all I wanted to be, was a cowboy.
Well, if you've had ponies since you were little, I can see why you have horses and stuff out here now, and how easy it was for you to get into cattle. But you actually had a military career for a while.
I'd spent 6 years in the Army and got to see the world a little bit, and enjoyed it, but decided that wasn't what I want my future to be. So, and then I was a farrier for 23 years. An important skill set to clean up those horses' hooves. Trim and shoe horses every day for years on end.
And now you're in this space where you've got your cattle.
Mm-hmm.
How many do you have? Is that okay to ask?
Yeah, right now we have 40 mamas.
Okay.
So we calve about 20 in the spring, and then we'll calve another 20 or so in the fall. And you're trying to run yours, so you're occasionally processing cattle instead of doing them all in one fell swoop. Yeah, we cater to the individual consumer. We don't have any big restaurant accounts. We don't do wholesale or things like that. We basically are set up to take care of the individual person that wants to come directly to the farm and buy some really wonderful beef.
Yeah.
Because we're kind of in that, we're not super small scale where we only have, 5 or 6 head of cows, and we're not super huge where we have several hundred. So we're kind of in a spot where we don't have the volume for the big, huge, Walmart, whatever accounts, big grocery store accounts. And we don't have a small volume where you can just sell it to your friends and family and be done. We're kind of in that middle ground where we've got to be able to keep a consistent volume of people coming to pick it up. So how do you do that? Where do people find you? Facebook and Instagram is pretty much what we've done from the start. Okay. I've sat down to start
instead of going to farmers markets.
Yeah, up to this point, up till this last spring, I shot horses all the time. Okay. So I had a schedule of 5 days a week. First thing in the morning, I feed cows, get in the truck, and I go shoe horses most of the day, and then try to catch up with the farm stuff at the end. And then, of course, we have 2 young boys. They're active into baseball, football, and everything else. And my wife fortunately takes care of a lot of that stuff, and I help out where I can. So as far as the farmers markets, there's just no time.
Yeah.
And we've developed enough of a customer base because we started selling in April of 2019. And what happened about 10 months later?
Yeah. The world shut down.
And, for us is basically a new business, just kind of getting out there. We had a big influx of people early on, like April of 2020. Mm-hmm. We had, oh my gosh, the grocery stores.
Because suddenly the grocery stores were empty because so much food was going into cafeterias and restaurants and weren't all going into the grocery stores, which is where everybody was buying all their food.
Yeah. And people found out about us, and they came out and they bought, a little bit, took it home and tried it, and some absolutely loved it, and others liked it, but, the price was not...
It was not cheap.
It just didn't fit into their budget. So, and we still get a lot of those people. They come by every few months, but it's not that...
A regular thing.
Every week deal. Yeah. Most people, they're going to run to Kroger or Walmart or even Publix or whatever to pick up their groceries that one day a week or every other week, where a lot of our customers, it's that once a month, maybe every couple months, they want something special.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's kind of one of the nature of the beast. We've got to consistently advertise just to keep people coming through.
Okay, so I'm guessing people really love the steaks.
They do.
From Wagyu. Ground beef, or what else do you do with it? Because, like, you got the whole animal, I'm assuming.
Everything you can imagine. We do all your normal steaks. You've got, ribeyes, New York strips, fillets, sirloins.
Yeah.
Because the marbling these animals can produce, we get some really phenomenal steaks out of the chuck or the shoulder of the animal. Flat irons, Denvers. We do a ranch steak, which is a little bit leaner, but compared to commodity beef or what you buy in the grocery store, it's way more well marbled. It's going to be similar to a sirloin, but has a little bit beefier, richer flavor than a sirloin does.
Nice.
It's a really wonderful steak that most people don't know about. We do the culotte picanha steaks, and that are phenomenal also. They look like a miniature New York strip once we cut them. Then we do very few roast. We do a mock tender roast out of the shoulder.
Okay.
We do a chuck eye roll roast out of the shoulder. And so we'll take the chuck eye and we'll cut about the first 3 pieces of that into a steak, because that's the same muscle as your ribeye is. So your chuck eye is a baby ribeye, essentially. We'll take about the first 3 steaks off that. Then you start losing the eye muscle, so it's not worth cutting into a steak anymore.
Okay.
Becomes a really wonderful roast if you want to do a pot roast or something. We do sirloin tip roasts, which are from the knuckle on the back leg or hip, I guess, area. And they're a wonderful, well marbled roast. Cook that a bunch of different ways. You can do it as a pot roast. We reverse sear it and make sandwich meat out of it.
Oh, yeah.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Done it on the grill that way.
Yeah.
Slow roasted on the grill about 300 degrees until it got up to 150.
Oh, yum.
And then had that smoky flavor with it too. Oh, it was amazing.
I can tell from your face.
That
it makes you hungry talking about it too.
That's been one of the most fun things with these animals, is just experimenting and seeing what's possible.
Yeah.
Korean short ribs. I think I just had a picture up here. I was going to show you those. They're your chuck short ribs, thin sliced across the bone, so you've got a little piece of bone in every single one. There are so...
All of the favorites on all the photo favorites are of
meat pictures and a few cow pictures.
I love it. But
just, we do so many things that you just can't find anywhere.
Yeah.
We keep all the offal. We keep the tongue, the cheek meat, the oxtail, and sell that.
And then with all the little trimmings and stuff, you make sausages.
We do. We take a portion of what would become ground beef. We make bratwurst, andouille sausage, sweet Italian sausage. We just came out with a chorizo a month or 2 ago. That is phenomenal.
That's my love language. Chorizo
I mean, the easiest, wonderful tacos you'll ever make, because it's everything.
Once you cook the meat, you're good.
You're done. Yeah, I mean,
you might want to put some lettuce or cilantro
lettuce and cheese
or whatever
on it, and a little bit of sauce, and I mean, we fed eight people one night with 4 pounds of chorizo and still had leftovers.
Everybody was happy.
And it took 5 minutes or maybe 10 at the most to fix it all. It was just amazing.
I love it. So most of your people, I assume, are from Clarksville, Springfield,
very local.
maybe Nashville.
We've had a few people drive from a little farther out. We've had people come from 3 hours away just to try our beef.
Yeah.
And so I mean, everything's locally raised, locally sold. We do not ship or anything like that, because we live within an hour of about 3 million people.
Yeah. There's a lot of folks around here.
Not that that's, a good, bad, or indifferent, but, to me, it just doesn't make sense to ship.
Yeah.
Why would I box it up and charge you $50 to get there overnight when you only live an hour away?
Yeah.
It's just, and that's, I guess, the puzzle with this whole deal is figuring out how to get the customers to us.
Yeah.
And you're going to have a lot that, think it's too far for whatever reason. I'm used to driving all over the place, so it's nothing to drive an hour down the road, but a lot of people aren't used to that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been the one struggle for us, is convincing the people to come here.
Yeah. I mean, in today's world, I guess during COVID, people were really excited to drive out into the country. Yeah. I noticed that from friends that were in the city that never used to go to the country. Suddenly,
get away from people.
Suddenly, we're excited to go for nice long drives, right? They kind of get out of the house because they were so tired of their house. But this part of the country is gorgeous for a drive.
It is.
I mean, when we were coming through, there would be like these really wooded like hollers, and you could see like there's got to be a creek down in there somewhere. I'm not sure where it is. So many trees you can't see it, but then it just opens up into some beautiful pasture land, and then it'll close back in with lots of trees and stuff.
And you get
it truly is beautiful.
A few cornfields and bean fields, tobacco.
Yeah,
is a big crop around here too, and yeah, it's a very diverse area.
Yeah. So if people aren't in an hour or two's drive and stuff, is there like a Wagyu network?
That's the one thing that's, I guess, amazing. And we've had people contact us from all over.
Yeah.
It's like, well, do you ship? I'm like, sorry, we don't. But there's, the biggest thing is the internet's amazing.
Yeah.
If you type in Wagyu and search enough, you're going to find somebody within a reasonable distance that raises these animals. To some extent, you're going to have a lot of the crossbred. So the Wagyu and Angus cross, there's more people out there raising those than there are the full bloods.
Mm-hmm.
They're a little bit faster maturing, faster to process because of that crossbred genetics and the benefits from the Angus.
Yeah.
Meat quality is going to be good, but it's not going to be the same as the 100% animals.
Yeah.
It's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
We decided to stick with the 100% Wagyu from the start just because of the consistency of the meat.
Yeah.
So you're going to get 50% genetics from the sire, 50% genetics from the dam. So if they're both Wagyu and they both have phenomenal bloodlines, it's going to increase your chances of producing really awesome beef. With the crossbred, you can produce, and we produced a few early on, and we had some really great results. I mean, comparable to what our full blood do.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest thing is you've got that possibility they get the marbling.
At some point, you don't know whether it's going to shift, and if it shifts,
get the marbling
your
genes
genetics
from the mom and not the sire, and you get an animal that doesn't perform as well as it could.
Yeah. And you don't know that until you've taken it to be processed and stuff.
And you can have one turn out great this time, the next time. So, and that's the thing is, in the cattle industry, everything revolves in 3-year cycles.
Mm-hmm.
So you almost 3.5, almost 4 actually, because by the time you breed a cow, gestation's 9 months, and then you're going to raise that calf for a certain amount of time before you process it. So it's a very long, drawn-out process.
Well, and we were talking, you started this with a partner,
mm-hmm.
and it's been forever.
Yeah.
And you feel like you're going to make a profit one day, Jeff.
One of these days, yes.
But that's also why you were still shoeing
yeah.
horses off,
yeah.
right? Like
you got to be able to keep the bills paid and keep the cows fed when we had shortcomings. Like if we had a slow month on meat sales and we had to kick in a little bit to help cover feed costs or whatever, that's what we did.
Yeah. So 8 years.
It'd be, well, there's 7 now.
7 now,
and
okay.
Then, so next year, next spring will be 8 years.
7 years before you quit the job of shoeing horses.
Mm-hmm. A lot of long
it's
days.
It's a long-term deal.
And I knew full aware the thoughts that we had producing the beef. Right. And there are things to do. We've sold a few bulls. We haven't sold really any females.
Yeah.
But we're kind of getting to that point where we'll start selling a few heifers, probably coming this fall.
Yeah.
But everything's been worth it to us to maintain and grow the herd. So we do process. We process females too, because that helps prove what your genetics do. And,
I love it.
Yeah. It's a labor of love, and one of these days I hope it pays off.
So is there anything I really forgot to ask you? I was going to let the boys tell me, but I knew they would get tired of listening, and they have been making faces at me for like the last 20 minutes at that door.
They do that.
So is there anything I missed asking you? Like when your customers come out, is there something that they're always blown away by?
Usually they'll look at the steaks, especially if we've got ribeyes and New York strips in stock. The marbling on them is beautiful.
Yeah.
And they'll pick it up and they're like, oh my gosh, look at that marbling. And then they'll realize how big that steak is.
Yeah.
Because
it's a shareable.
They're used to going to the grocery store and buying a package of 10-ounce ribeyes.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they pick up one ribeye that weighs, a bunch. And that's the thing is we try to keep our prices as reasonable as possible because
But the price per pound is one thing versus the price per steak.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we figured that out years ago when we first started selling meat because we started out at price per pound.
Yeah.
And all it did was confuse people.
Yeah.
Because they would pick up a ribeye that was 24 ounces or 22 ounces or whatever and like, well, how much is that going to be? Well, it says 1.25 pounds. So, yeah, but how much is that?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want to sit there and do the math in their head.
Mm-hmm.
So we broke it down and basically based our steak prices on an average.
Yeah.
A minimum average. So our ribeyes are based on an 18-ounce steak.
Okay.
And they're never 18 ounces. So the customer's getting
they get the extra.
Nice little bonus.
Yeah.
And the processor asked me that we were at a couple years ago. He's like, well, we can get them down to that 18 ounces. Like, at what cost?
Yeah.
I said, okay, you're going to trim a little bit off here and a little bit off there. And then what are you going to do? Oh, we'll just throw it in with the grind. I said, that doesn't do any good.
Yeah.
I'd rather give it to the customer than throw it in the grind.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. And the ribeye strips, we keep whatever they are. We cut them 1.1/8, 1.25 thick, and whatever they are, they are. Our other steaks, fillets, we cut them down to 8 ounces. And sirloins, we cut a center cut sirloin down to 8 or 9 ounces. And we do the same thing with flat irons and Denvers and ranches. And it's most people love the smaller size because it's a perfect meal.
Yeah.
Especially when you have that richer flavor. You realize you take an 8-ounce Denver steak, which is phenomenally marbled, and it's just beautiful. And by the time you eat that 8 or 9 ounce steak, you're like, that's plenty.
Yeah. I love it. All right, Chris, now I'll ask you, did I forget to ask him anything important? So people do buy their ground beef.
They do.
You.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it makes the most amazing hamburger you'll ever eat.
Really?
That same rich, buttery, tender flavor.
I do love really good burgers.
When we first started processing it and made our own burgers here at home, the best way I could describe it, it was like biting into air that had a beef flavor to it. It's that tender.
Wow.
I mean, you had no resistance, not much chewing. It's just bite into your burger and you're like, oh my gosh.
It's fantastic.
It's just amazing. Yeah, and then you get the rich, buttery flavor with it.
Yeah.
And it just, everything we do, minimal seasoning. Salt and pepper, that's about it. Because there's so much natural flavor to the meat, it does not need much else.
I love it. Well, I can't wait to get this episode out to people. I'm going to, as I do this, I'm going to tell you which all photos I need you to send if you don't already send them to me. I really appreciate your time.
And I tell people, I said, our goal for the future is one day, we'd like to buy our own, right now we lease, so we'd like to buy our own big farm.
Yeah.
But it's going to be more, not just producing phenomenal beef, but the whole agritourism.
Yeah.
We want people to come see how the cattle are raised, be able to walk around, enjoy nature.
Yep.
And, like you and I going out and checking on the mamas, just have a path where they can go by and see them, not get out in them because mamas can get territorial. Yeah. But
well, you saw I know how to stay on the other side of the farmer.
Yeah. But, and it's people are so disconnected from where their food comes from.
Yep.
That we'd like to get it back to it. People want to know where their food comes from.
That's all what I'm trying to do with this podcast is help people better understand, because not everybody has a phone book in their phone where they can just call up people and say, who else should I talk to? And there's so much misinformation out there that if people really want to know the truth, all they have to do is come ask the people that are doing it. Yep. Well, I'll make sure they can find you on Instagram and Facebook, and they can ask you all those questions too. But knowing that they could just find some farmers in their area by looking is also a great thing. Thanks so much. Your boys are dying to get back in this house, and I can't make them stay out there any longer. Jeff, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I have to tell you how fun it was when Braxton and Gunnar came back in and were checking to see how the interview went and what was going to happen next. About the sweetest kids ever, Braxton convinced his mom to make shepherd's pie, which is one of his favorite meals, and was trying hard to get me to stay for the evening. It's so sweet. But now I really want to try shepherd's pie with Wagyu beef because it seems like there may be a little bit of a different butteriness to it, and that does sound really good with shepherd's pie. So I hope you guys found this of interest. We're going to go ahead and share it on our social channels. If you could, share it with people in the way you think they'd find it most fitting, those who might enjoy hearing about the foods they enjoy, but a little bit different perspective than they may normally hear. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you again in 2 weeks.